It is day 200 of me doing these video series, and it just so happens that on day 200, I am going to talk about a sport that I have grown to love over the past couple of years, and that is Formula One. We are here, not we are not here, but the drivers are in Italy for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, the second race of the season in Italy after Bahrain. The bandwagon is in Italy for this particular race. All three practice sessions are done, the qualifying session is done, and this has a lot of narrative to it going into today evening's race day. Now, before we get into what can happen in the race, let's quickly have a look at what happened in qualifying. But before that, practice sessions. Now, Red Bull, as we discussed in the previous race, were a team that look more stronger on paper, at least when compared to their rivals Mercedes, and Mercedes have their work cut out. But after the Bahrain Grand Prix, all the Mercedes drivers, all the Mercedes works engine drivers, meaning the Mercedes drivers Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas, along with every other team which has Mercedes engines in their cars, requested the teams to change the drivability of the car, to make minor changes which will improve the drivability of the car. That was there in the news building up to this particular race, and that seems to have helped because on paper at least, Mercedes have gotten closer to Red Bull. Red Bull had some, reliability issues in the practice session 1 and practice session 2, which is why neither Max Verstappen or Sergio Perez could get into the top 2 when it came to the final sessions. But in practice 3, Red Bull stepped up and showed what their car is made of. Max Verstappen topping the charts in practice 3. But as Lewis Hamilton says, what you do on Saturday evening and what you do on Sunday is what eventually counts. And when it came to Saturday evening, the qualifying session, it was only one man who could get pole position, and that is Sir Lewis Hamilton. 99th career pole position, 30th different track at which he has achieved a pole position. Just let that sink in. 30 different tracks he's gotten pole position, 99th career pole. I mean, that is a stat which will make you stand and salute Sir Lewis Hamilton. But close behind him, now this is where the narrative of this race changes. It is not two Mercedes in the top 3. It is one Mercedes and two Red Bull cars in the top 3. Lining up in P1 is Lewis Hamilton. Lining up in P2 is Sergio Perez, who starts on the front row for the first time in his career. And in P3 is Max Verstappen. Now, all the top 3 were covered within a tenth of a second. Now, there were milliseconds between the timings of these 3 drivers when it came to the last run in Q3. That's how the close competition is turning out to be between these 2 teams. And what is even more interesting is that Sergio Perez will start the race on the soft tires, whereas Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen will start the race on medium tires. So theoretically, Sergio Perez might just have a little bit more pace to, go at Lewis Hamilton in the opening few laps of the race. But we all know what Lewis Hamilton can do when he has a medium tire and knows that he just need to do one stop in the race. Now, it'll be slightly tricky for Checo and Max, but for the first time in a very long time, Red Bull have 2 cars to chase one Mercedes with, because Valtteri Bottas had an awful qualifying session. In Q3, he wasn't able to wind up a hot lap and wasn't able to get to the top of the field. He eventually finished up at P8. That's how far back he is from the rest of the action. So that is a very disappointing qualifying session for him. Now, moving on to some of the other teams and what happened in qualifying, there were Charles Leclerc, Scuderia Ferrari in P4. Now, this man, last year also, he showed with a subprime car that he can bring the best out of it. Now, the car has improved this year significantly, and he's now consistently managing to put that car up in front of the best of the rest battle, and he is there at P4 for this particular encounter. Now, Lando Norris, I feel bad for Lando Norris very much, because had he not exceeded track limits, by the way, a lot of drivers exceeded track limits in the qualifying session and even in the practice sessions. That is something to look out for. The FIA have really gotten strict with track limits after what happened in Bahrain between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. So Lando Norris With the final lap in Q3, he put himself up into P2, but because he had exceeded track limits, his lap time got deleted and he got pushed down to P7. Daniel Ricciardo, his teammate, slowly getting used to the McLaren car in P6. Pierre Gasly, the Alpha Tauri veteran, so to speak, in P5. Now, Esteban Ocon beat Fernando Alonso in qualifying session. Now, this is the first time since Malaysia 2017 that Fernando Alonso has lost to a teammate in a qualifying session. That's how big this result for Esteban Ocon is. Other surprises in the qualifying session include Carlos Sainz, who could not make it to Q3. He was knocked out in Q2. He will start P11. The good thing for him is that he will have the free choice of tires to choose from as he starts the race. He's still not used to the car, so you wouldn't read too much into it. It'll let him have a few more races to get used to the mechanics of the car, get more comfortable inside the Scuderia, and hopefully he will be there next to Charles Leclerc for the sake of the Scuderia fans. Now, another word for the Williams drivers, both George Russell and Nicholas Latifi were able to pull their car out of Q1, and for a moment there it almost seemed like George Russell could also make it to Q3. He finished P12. He was knocked out in Q2, just a tenth and a half off the last place from Q3. So very impressive performance from him as well. Let's quickly run through the rest of the standings. Carlos Sainz in P11, George Russell P12, Sebastian Vettel again failing to get into Q3 will start P13, Nicholas Latifi a very impressive P14, Fernando Alonso P15. Now that will sting, especially because his teammate is there in the top 10. He will start P9. So qualifying is done and dusted. The narrative for the race has been built up. There is a lot that we can expect, but for all you know, Lewis Hamilton might just drive off into the distance. But Red Bull have everything in their favor in this moment to throw whatever they have at Lewis Hamilton to see if they can stop him or not. They have two drivers, very skilled drivers on opposite strategies, so they can look at attacking Hamilton from different angles. Mercedes have their work cut out because they have one car disadvantage. Valtteri Bottas will have to have his own race and see what he can make out of it. Lewis Hamilton, he won last year at the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix here in Imola. He started P2 last year. He started P2 last year. I'm so sorry. He starts on pole this year. He will want to convert this into a victory again. After the qualifying session, he said that it was an unlikely place for him to start because he did not think that we had the pace. They had the pace rather. So let's see. It's all been built up, and whether or not Red Bull are able to take advantage of their advantageous position, we'll only find out in a few hours' time. Tonight, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, race number 2 of the 2021 Formula 1 season.